Today we're going to be replacing the rear rotors and pads on an 06 Toyota Highlander. This is the same process on the Highlander from years 2004 to 2007 and the Lexus RX330 and 400. With that said, this is nearly identical process to various other Toyota vehicles in these years, the RAV4, etc. The only difference is you're going to have different part numbers and torque specs. To get started, the first thing we need to do is remove the cap off of our brake reservoir here, and the reason you need to do that is as we compress those pistons down there on our calipers, it's going to cause that fluid to rise in there, and you just want to make sure you monitor that during the brake process as well to make sure nothing's inadvertently flowing out of here. Now we're ready to jack the vehicle up here, and what I typically do is only do one wheel at a time to prevent this thing from rolling down, because when you're doing the rear brakes you cannot set that emergency brake because you won't be able to get that rotor off. So just make sure you set wheel chocks on all your wheels, jack your vehicle up, put a good quality jack stand under there, then we'll go ahead and remove the lug nuts in the wheel with a 21 mil. Then we'll remove the two 14 mil bolts here that are holding our caliper onto our bracket. And sometimes, depending on how corroded these are, sometimes you got to do that to get those out. So just put a flathead screwdriver, a punch or something on the end there. And before you do that, just make sure you got the bolt threaded out as far as it's going to go. Then if it's still not coming out very easy, just gently tap it like this, then it will pop out. Then we should be able to slide our caliper off. Then we'll go ahead and we'll compress our piston back in our caliper. And the reason you need to do this is because your new pads are going to be thicker, so this must get compressed back in. And also, as I mentioned there before, make sure you're monitoring that reservoir up front to make sure that when you're compressing this in, it doesn't have that fluid inadvertently flowing out. Then we'll go ahead and compress this piston back in. And I'm just going to be using an OTC tool that I've used for many years. You can use a C-clamp, various other things. Just make sure when you're back here, don't be clamping on any of these hoses. Clamp on the actual caliper part, and then you'll see that it'll easily compress that in. All right, so once we got that compressed in, then we'll take a brake hanger and we'll hang it up out of the way, because we don't want it to be dangling on this hose because you risk breaking that hose. Then remove our caliper bracket. To do that, it's just 217 mil. Then remove the bracket. Now we're ready to remove the rotor. Sometimes you get lucky and these slide off, and other times you got to fight with them a little bit. There are some threads here that you can thread some bolts in there and it will push the rotor away from the wheel hub in there. But typically you can get a little aggressive with it and get this off here first before you have to get to that. In addition, as I mentioned there before, make sure you do not have your emergency brake set, because if your emergency brake is set, it'll have those pads in there expanded and you won't be able to get this off. All right, before we install our new one, just go through here and make sure you don't have a bunch of corrosion on the wheel hub here. And you can put some anti-seize there if you want. And when that looks good, we'll go ahead and install our new one. The one we have here has a full coating on it. If you get any of the ones that are a bare metal with oil, make sure you use some brake clean and spray that oil off before you install it. And we'll go ahead and install our new rotor up here. One last comment here. I don't know if you picked that up, but we're missing half of the dust shield here, and this is a very common problem with these Toyota Highlanders in these years. So if yours is missing, you might want to think about it. To replace this, you will have to remove the hub here, pull it out, put a new one on there. But it looks like on this vehicle, neither one of them are there, and the customer doesn't want us to mess with them here today. But that's something to keep in mind if you're going to do this at home. All right, moving on to the bracket, we'll first remove our old pads. And you're going to want to remove these clips on both sides as well. And before you do that, make sure the pads that you got, you have new clips. Otherwise, you're going to have to thoroughly clean these out. But a lot of times on the brake pad kits that you get, they will give you new clips as well, but not all the time. So just verify you have that before you tear these out of here. All right, then take a wire brush and you're going to thoroughly clean up all this area and get all that rust and corrosion on there, and we'll spray it down with a little brake cleaner. After you get this cleaned up, then we can install our new clips. One note here is you want to make sure that you're paying attention to the ones you remove, because as you can see, there's two different versions, so you don't want to get two of the same one on the one side. You need to have one on this side and one on that side. So these should just slide in place here. If they don't, make sure you clean that up. And also on this version here, it did come with new boots and some other hardware, so we are going to swap these out as well. Just make sure when you're installing these, make sure you get it 100% around that lip, because you don't want any corrosion or moisture to get in there. And these are kind of a bear to get installed, but eventually it'll slide around that lip, then it will seal. And then it should look like that, where you can see it's 100% around that lip on both sides. And also make sure your clips are fully seated in there. Then we're ready to lubricate this, and then we'll install it on the vehicle. So take a little bit of your brake lube here, and you don't have to get wild with this. Just the idea here is you just want to put a little bit in these areas so those brake pads can easily slide in and out. And on this version here, it's kind of hard to easily put lubrication in there. So we'll just get a little bit here on the ends, and then we'll make sure we thoroughly lubricate the pad as well, so that'll slide in and out of there. And we're also going to want to put a little here, because our sliding pins are going to get sealed here. So if we just put it on our pin here, it will come out and it won't go all the way in there. So we want to make sure we put a little there, and we'll also put some on these sliding pins. And one other comment here, and I'll show you which one that goes to here in a minute when I install these, but as you can see, these ones here are pretty rusted, so we're going to have to get a little bit aggressive here, because we don't want any of this still on there. Sometimes it's easier just to replace these, but I'll show you what you can do here. If you're at home there and you need to, reuse these, you can use a file here, a wire brush, or in bad cases like this one here is, I'm going to use my little Milwaukee tool here, and we're just going to grind a little bit of that off there. Now, we're not going to get too aggressive, but we want to make sure that lip is exposed there, because that's what's going to be sitting back here to seal debris out of this boot. All right, so once you get that cleaned up, it doesn't have to be perfect there, but you know, the general idea is to get the majority of that off. Make sure we lubricate this pin before we put it in there as well, and we should be set to go ahead and install that on the vehicle there. All right, so we'll put our bracket up here, and then we'll tighten both of these 17 mil bolts to 58 foot-pounds. Now we're ready to install our pads. We'll just put a little bit of lube on the ends here. You don't got to get crazy with it. Just put a little in there so it helps it slide in and out of those. Then you're going to kind of fight with this a little bit, but eventually it will slide in place. So just get one side in, push it all the way down, then come up here and slide the other one in. And make sure when you're doing this that this is easily able to slide in and out. If it doesn't, it's going to get jammed on there and it's going to cause you problems. So once it looks good there, and we'll install the one on the back as well. Now ready to install the caliper. We'll first take a wire brush and just get a little of that corrosion off there so we can get this to seal in there better. Then you're going to set this on there and just make sure when you're installing this that you don't have these in here as a bind. You want to make sure that it's sitting in there like that on both sides. All right, so then we'll lubricate our guide pins a little bit and we'll slide those in there. Then we'll tighten these up to 32 foot-pounds. All right, so then just double check everything looks good here and repeat that same process on the other side. Once you're done with the other side, don't forget to reattach the brake reservoir cap up there and also make sure you're doing the right torque specs on your wheel as well. So hopefully this helped you out. If it did, please give me the thumbs up. If you're interested in more content like this, please hit that subscribe. But again, I hope this helped you out. Thanks for watching.